People put up fences for a lot of different reasons. It might be to keep the dog and the kids in or out. It might be to define a boundary between your property and the neighboring property. Oftentimes it's for privacy and that sense of enclosure on your own space. There are lots of different kinds of fences that people can choose from, starting with the beautiful iron or aluminum that are basically just the bars, moving of course to a solid stockade or rustic looking fence. You also have of course the old traditional chain link and some of the beautiful newer versions of that might include goat panel with a great cap on it, or it might be the really simple, really inexpensive 6/6-10-10 welded wire mesh that is tied to posts. Oftentimes what happens is people get a fence up in their yard or placed, and then they look at it and think, oh gosh, I don't like the way this looks. How can I screen it? What can I do to soften it to make it look a little bit better than it does so I don't feel like I'm living in the backyard of a prison? Depending on whether you're screening or softening your fence, and depending on what that fence is made out of, that's going to determine where you put the plant material and what kind of plants you choose. So one of the hardest fences to screen is the white plastic. It's shiny, it's slippery, nothing will actually cling to it very well, and that means you're going to need to put plants in the foreground. Oftentimes when we're screening a fence so we don't have to see it, we want to be able to use plants that are very vertical so they don't take up too much space. If we choose plants that cling or climb, they can obviously be closer to the fence, but they have to be able to cling or climb or twine. The other thing that you want to think about is if you're softening that fence, it may be possible, depending on whether the fence is at the property line or a little bit beyond the property line onto your own property, you can put plants on either side of it. And in that way, the fence, even though it might be a straight line, sort of appears to appear and then disappear as those plants weave in and out. Think about whether you want a solid wall of green, which is essentially a living fence, or whether you'd like to go back and forth with some deciduous materials, some grasses, some shrubs that are going to flower that will give you a little bit more interest and perhaps make that fence disappear even further. Vertical evergreens are going to look like pencil points. You have options in the deciduous world as well that will be very narrow, but then if you add some rounded forms or some of those beautiful flowing grasses, you get texture, you get color, you get a lot of seasonal interest that you really can't get if you simply replace your fence with another fence. And of course those twiners and viners are going to give you color like the fabulous mailbox clematis.